If you've ever found a recipe that sounded intriguing, but it just had an ingredient that you weren't that fond of, well, this is my version of Pound Dropper's one-pot creamy garlic shrimp. But I'm not using shrimp. I'm not a seafood fan, but if you are, you can go by her recipe. But don't be afraid of changing up a recipe just because it says one ingredient. Use something else. And I'm going to show you how coming up next. Hello and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Roy. I'm a home cook, an amateur baker, and I'm here on this channel sharing recipes that have helped me to lose over 125 pounds, whether those recipes are mine or someone else's. Now today is not one of mine, but before we get into that, I did want to give a big, gigantic thank you to everyone who has ordered my cookbook. You can see it back there on the counter. Since the announcement last Saturday, I did a live. And since then, I've sold over 100 copies, so I really do appreciate everyone who has bought a copy of the cookbook. I also want to thank those who have gone over to the Recipes with Roy store and bought aprons or t-shirts or mouse pads or what have you. Thank you for supporting me. It really helps me to test my recipes, to have a little extra cash on hand, because sometimes being on a fixed income, that can be a challenge. But what is not a challenge is today's recipe. Now, if you saw the thumbnail or you see my board back there, you see that there's a word crossed out. Those of you who have been around for a while know that I do not do seafood. So I thought the idea for this was great, but I could not see myself cooking shrimp. So this is basically Pound Dropper's one-pot creamy garlic shrimp, but with chicken instead of shrimp. And I'm also going to be making some pasta. I'm going to stir those together and make it a big pasta dish along with some peas probably. But I will link directly to Pound Dropper's actual recipe down in the description box. And just underneath that link, I will put the description of what I've done, the changes that I've made, or maybe even that I will make if I decide, because I haven't tried this before, if I decide it needs a little something more. But let's go over the ingredients that I'm going to use. Here I have 1 pound of chicken breast that I've cut up into bite-sized pieces to kind of approximate the size of shrimp, but you don't have to be too fussy about that. But I'm not doing shrimp, I'm doing chicken. In the recipe, she calls for 1 pound of shrimp, so I'm using 1 pound of chicken breast. Here I have 1 cup of almond milk, and that's going to help give us the creamy factor here. Here is 1/3 cup of grated Parmesan, and that's not going to just give us some flavor, it's also going to help this to thicken up a bit. Here I have 2 tablespoons of fat-free cottage cheese that I have blended up. Now, in her recipe, she does say 2 tablespoons of non-fat Greek yogurt, strained, which is basically my homemade cream cheese, or 2 tablespoons of cottage cheese that you have blended to make smooth. Now, I figured I have some extra fat-free cottage cheese on hand. I'll use that, and that is what I'm going to base my bites, points, and calories on, but it's not really going to make that big of a difference. But had I known how difficult it was to just blend 2 tablespoons in a mini food processor, I probably would have gone for the non-fat Greek yogurt strained, my cream cheese. Because while I was trying to whir this up and get it smooth, it just kept shooting out to the sides, so I ended up smashing it and getting it as close as I could. Next time, I think I'll use the Greek yogurt strained, basically, as I said, my cream cheese. Here I have 2 tablespoons of chicken broth. That is going to give us a little bit of flavor in here. And I didn't want to open a whole carton just for 2 tablespoons of chicken broth. So I did 2 tablespoons of water with about 1/8 of a teaspoon of Better Than Bouillon. It's that bouillon paste that comes in a jar. So I just mixed up a little batch of that rather than opening a whole carton just for 2 tablespoons. Here I have 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, and that of course is going to be our thickener. That's going to help this get very creamy without using any cream. Here I have 1 tablespoon of light butter. Now I'm using, I can't believe it's not Butter Light, which is just 1 bite or Old Blue Point per tablespoon. When I look in the healthy app and it just comes up with light butter, it seems like a lot of them are about 3 bites for 1 tablespoon. So definitely look for the I can't believe it's not butter light. That seems to be the lowest in bites, points, and calories so far as I know. Here I have 1 tablespoon of minced garlic. Now that is what she calls for in the recipe. Personally, I've put that much into other things and don't really taste a lot of garlic. So I was going to double it, but I figured I would go with her take on it right now, and then I could always change it later if I want to. And I will leave in the comments what I did with that, if I did bump it up or left it as is. Here I have 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, 1 teaspoon of Italian seasoning, and 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt. Now, if you're using regular salt, you want to use half as much. Kosher salt, you usually have to use more because the granules are bigger than table salt. If you used 1/2 teaspoon of table salt, it would be saltier than this is going to be with 1/2 teaspoon of kosher. Although between Morton's and Diamond Crystal, apparently there's some variation even between them. Typically you would want to use half as much if you're using table salt instead of kosher. And also the other way around, if a recipe calls for table salt, but you only have kosher salt, which I don't see happening, but it could, you would want to double the kosher salt compared to the table salt. And I have my cooking spray here. In her recipe, Pound Dropper does recommend using a teaspoon of olive oil, but I'm not going to fuss with a teaspoon of olive oil. You can if you want. I don't think it should affect the bites, points, and calories, but you can do that if you want. I'm using the cooking spray. All right, so those are all of the ingredients. Let me shuffle a few things around and we'll get started. All right, so the first thing that Pound Dropper has you do is mix the cornstarch in with the almond milk. So I'm gonna add that in and whisk that up to get that incorporated. Now, I've mentioned this previously, but in case you haven't seen those episodes of this channel, cornstarch goes in best into a cold liquid. You never wanna add it to a hot liquid because it'll immediately seize up. So that's why we're adding this in to the almond milk. That way it's gonna disperse, it's gonna be nice and spread out, and it's not gonna clump up. Then she has you add in non-fat Greek yogurt, or in my case, the fat-free cottage cheese. And then you're gonna whisk that through. Now, she also has later, when we're making our sauce, she has you add this with the chicken broth and the Italian seasoning to the pan. I don't know why she doesn't just add it in here, so I'm going to be a rebel and I'm going to do just that. Chicken broth, Italian seasoning, and whisk that all through. This will also let the Italian seasoning bloom a little, get wet, and kind of release its flavors into the milk. So that's done. I'm going to set this aside, and then I'm going to take my chicken, my kosher salt, and my pepper. I'm going to sprinkle this on to the chicken just to get that seasoned, and I'll just toss that lightly in the bowl. Typically I would do this on a cutting board, but for the sake of the video, I'm doing it this way. She actually has you put the shrimp in the pan and then season it, but I like to make sure that the seasoning is spread throughout. Now my skillet is set over medium-high heat, and I've already sprayed it with cooking spray. So now that I have this all combined in there, I'm gonna add my chicken to the pan. And you wanna spread that out into an even layer so everything is cooking well and not riding on top of somebody else and not getting cooked through. Now for the shrimp, she has you cook it for about 2 to 3 minutes before flipping it. I'm going to probably give this about 4 minutes just to get some color on it before I flip it. Okay, so it's been about 4 minutes. You can see that the chicken around the edge is starting to get white. That's what we want. We also want to get a little bit of color on the other side, which we have. So now I'm going to flip them. Now, I have mentioned in other videos, but it's been a while. If you've ever been cooking meat and you go to turn it and it's sticking to the pan, do not panic. What that means is that it's not cooked yet. It's not ready to flip. Once it releases, that's when it's telling you, okay, I can get flipped now. But don't panic if anything sticks to the pan, because it will release once it's ready. And now I'm gonna give this about another 3 to 4 minutes to cook through on that side. So it's been a little over 3 minutes. I'm just going to stir this around. And now transfer it to a bowl. You could transfer it to a plate, but I like putting it in a bowl. That way all of the chicken is staying close together and not drying out. Whereas if it's on a plate, it's more spread out and it has a chance to dry out a little bit more. This way they're all gonna stay together, continue cooking through a little bit, and that steam is going to keep them moist. That's my opinion. May hear others say something different, but that's the way I'm doing it. And now we're going to add the light butter into the pan and melt that down. And the garlic, once that's melted, and stir that through. And garlic, you only want to cook for about 30 seconds or so, just until it becomes fragrant. You don't want it to burn because then it gets very bitter tasting. Okay, now we're adding in the almond milk mixture. And we're going to whisk that. Now the bad thing is because I didn't process the cottage cheese enough, I do see the curds, which is not my favorite thing, but they should melt down a little bit in here as it's cooking. But what we're doing is we're just going to whisk this until it comes up to a simmer, which doesn't take very long at all. And you can see it's already starting to thicken. So it's at a simmer. We're going to turn this down to medium-low. And we're going to let this cook to our desired state. I actually think this won't have long to go for me. I want it thick, but I also want it loose enough to coat the pasta I'm going to cook with it. Just going to give this a minute or two to thicken up. Okay, so I think this is about where I want it. So I'm going to reduce it to low. She says reduce it to low. Then add in the Parmesan cheese and whisk that through. You want to get that cheese melted and evenly dispersed throughout our dish here. Okay, now I'm going to add the chicken back in with any drippings that may be in there because those drippings are flavor. And I'm going to stir this through, coat our chicken, and turn off the heat. And that's all there is to it. Now I'm going to cover it just to make sure everything stays moist and it doesn't dry out as I'm talking to you and giving you the nutrition facts. Now I'm doing this obviously a little different from Pound Dropper. Now this serves 4 people, and for Pound Dropper she got 3 WW points. I'm not sure if those are the current points or not, but that's what she has on her website. But for me, serving 4, I'm getting 2 Better Balanced Bites or Old Blue points. I'm on the Healthy Better Balanced plan, which is equivalent to the old WW Blue plan, and that's around where their current plan is, so that may be why she got 3, because some items I know are higher or lower than they used to be on the Blue plan. Now, if you are following calories, the calories for one serving is 280. And if you are following macros, the fat is 9.9 grams. Saturated fat is 2.6 grams. Protein is 20 grams. Carbs are 29.4 grams. Fiber is 1.5 grams, and sugars are 0.2 grams for 1/4 of this. Now, you can serve it however you want, but as I said, I am making mine with pasta. You could do it with rice, cauliflower rice, however you want to serve it. But I hope you enjoyed my take on Pound Dropper's one-pot creamy garlic shrimp, in my case chicken. And if you did, I'd appreciate you doing the usual, like, subscribe, comment, share, and hit that notification bell for the next time I upload any sort of video, such as this Sunday, the 17th, we do have our final set collab. We've been doing monthly collabs, but we've decided that now we're just going to do them randomly because we're getting a little burnt out coming up with ideas, but once we get an idea, hit that notification bell and you'll be alerted when it comes out. But this Sunday, we're going to be doing Meatless March. So they're going to be meatless meals. So I hope you'll join me for that. Also, if you want the recipe for this, as I said, I'm going to link directly to Pound Dropper's page down below, and I will put the things that I've changed on it. I'm still not sure if I will increase the garlic or not, but it'll be there whatever I did. Also down in the description box is a link for my cookbook if you'd like to have that on your shelf. And there's also my new Recipes with Roy store where I have aprons, t-shirts, caps, mouse pads, etc. So check out those. It really does help support my channel and allow me to test recipes and get them out to you. Also down there is a link to my Amazon storefront. If I've used anything on the channel and you're interested in it, it may be there. There's also my Instagram and a bunch of Facebook groups that I am part of, so go check out that description box for for all sorts of information. But I got to get my pasta started, and I hope that you're going to be giving this a try yourself very soon. And if you do, let me know if you did the shrimp or you did the chicken. I'd be interested to know. But until next time, bye.